Well, hello there. We are live on YouTube, and welcome to the recording of Search Marketing Scoop episode number 7. Thank you for watching in. So this is where we do the recording of an audio podcast on video. So most people will be consuming this as an audio podcast. If you are not a subscriber, you can head over to searchmarketingscoop.com to find the flavor of podcast that is your preference. It could be Android, could be Apple, whatever it is. Just follow the links there and you'll be able to subscribe to the audio podcast. So we're broadcasting unannounced on the Semrush YouTube channel. So we'll get hopefully a few people tuning in, probably not a massive volume of people watching live, but that's okay because I said we're going to record some great content here. If we get some questions, then feel free to ask them in the chat if you happen to be watching live. So tell us, where you're from. Tell us what kind of SEO or paid search challenges that you happen to be having at the moment, and it would be good to find out a little bit more about you and what you happen to be doing at the moment. But we're going to be starting the proper recording of the podcast just in a second. So I'll refrain from introducing our guests today until we actually do the proper introduction in the podcast. So wait there with bated breath, and I will hit the record button and do the proper introduction. So let's get going with the recording of the audio podcast. Google confirms the rollout of a broad... I'm going to start that one again, actually.
That was very, dramatic.
It was.
Oh my gosh.
Here we go. Google confirms the rollout of a broad core algorithm update. Mobile first indexing notifications are arriving in Search Console. Google posts $31.1 billion in total revenue dollars for the first quarter, and responding to reviews can improve paid search conversion rates. So broadcasting live in the Semrush YouTube channel, this is Search Marketing Scoop, the Semrush show that brings together the top PPC and SEO folk to discuss the current search headlines and how they impact you. Hi, I'm your host, David Bain, and let's meet today's guests. So first up is an international SEO consultant, speaker, and author. She is the founder of Orainti. Welcome to the Scoop, Aleyda Solis.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, David. I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you so much for joining us, Aleyda. And next up is a self-confessed techno geek and a general mental case. Hashtag must rewrite Twitter bio.
Yes.
She's the strategy director at Epiphany. Welcome, Arianne Donoghue.
Hi, thank you, David. I should probably rewrite it to I listen to far too many podcasts about true crime and murder, but I'll do that after this.
Okay, well, as long as if true crime and murder isn't a part of this, then
this podcast.
Okay, yes.
Hopefully not virtual crime, probably.
Well, let's go back to Aleyda for story number 1. So, and that is Google confirms the rollout of this broad core algorithm update. So this confirms actually the high level of volatility that we've seen in Semrush Sensor. That was discussed in last week's episode with Barry Schwartz. So Aleyda, have you been able to see any kind of impact from this algorithm update?
Actually, yes. There have been a lot of turmoil since a month ago, and there was actually an update even like a few days ago too. So it seems that it is like a new iteration of the quality update that we have seen already for a while, that hits again and again the same type of websites, right? Like, for example, last year in November, it happened again in December, and again in March, now again a few days ago. So we see that there is this core algorithm update that is about quality, is about relevance, the connection and the fit from a search relevant perspective and intent perspective from the user versus the pages that rank and fulfill those type of queries, right?
Aleyda, you said hit the same type of websites. What type of websites are you talking about?
Well, usually, for example, in my case, the type of websites that I have seen that have at some point lost a little bit and at some point also regain after a while have been websites that are usually classified websites, for example, or forum type of websites. These websites have tons of content. Sometimes, unfortunately, these are not content that are correctly organized all the time, or because these are large website structures, and sometimes these contents are cannibalizing each other, competing against each other. When I have analyzed the negative impact that in some cases they have had, I have realized it's like, well, it's expected to happen because they were previously ranking for queries where actually like there were better pages options to fulfill that type of search. In any case, and the typical action, right, is the agreement with the client. Like, okay, this is something that was already usually planned to be done. So let's prioritize to avoid this type of content cannibalization issues or duplication issues or thin content issues that at some point end up negatively affecting much more obviously now, I will say, than before.
Okay, right? So you talk about cannibalization and the duplication there as well. Is this generally an issue with websites losing rankings because they are publishing content that is already published on other websites?
Not necessarily, but that they have many internal pages that are featuring very similar content. It's more like that. At least the websites that I have seen myself directly, right? The websites that I'm talking about is not that they are aggregators and they are showing the exact same content that all the websites, all the domains, but that they are featuring very similar content across their internal pages. And a few of these pages that ended up at some point being ranked for certain queries are not selected anymore and are not ranked anymore at some point, but others are, and not necessarily as well as high as they used to, right? Since this is, of course, I have seen this iteration already for a while. I have taken action, for example, last year with a couple of this type of classifieds and forums websites to put a little bit the organization in a better shape, to organize better, canonicalize better, internal link and drive the user and the crawler to the best places to fulfill the type of search queries that they want to rank for. And in the last updates, I have seen positive impact for a couple of them already. So this is the one thing that has been analyzed before by many other SEOs, that indeed it seems that this is a core update that is an iteration of a quality update that had been already going on for a while, and sometimes it hits negatively certain websites, sometimes it's a positive impact. It seems that it's the same type of websites though that are hit again and again negatively, those that with content quality problems that don't actually fulfill the user intent, that there is a lack of relevance for the actual query that is searched indeed.
So it's not just a technical SEO fix. It's not just as simple as making sure that each URL has a canonical version of it. You're actually looking at the quality of the content and the volume of the content and the relevance of the content.
Indeed. It's not a matter of effectively optimize the internal crawler or indexing of the pages, or no, it's about the actual content quality and relevance that exists on the site web pages, and how do they address the actual queries for which they are ranking, or they used to rank.
Over to Arianne for story number 2, and that is Google posts 31.1 billion in total revenue for the first quarter of 2018, and ad revenues just by themselves are nearly $27 billion of this revenue. So Not bad for a little startup.
A lot of money.
Indeed. So Arianne, obviously advertising revenue, specifically paid search, is a significant chunk of Google's revenue. So is this likely to continue in a similar, upward trend over the coming few years? Or do you think paid search has maybe peaked in terms of the amount of revenue that Google can generate from that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because you've got the two sides to this. You've got the potential for the individual cost for every click to increase, as well as the overall volume of traffic. So at this point, Google could maintain the existing cost per clicks and still make more money quarter on quarter purely through the growth of search. But they don't want to be reliant on a continued increase in click and impression volumes. And so having these, the average cost per click go up is really key to them being able to grow that margin. And it's interesting because overall CPCs, particularly with the shift to mobile, are probably actually cheaper for some advertisers than they've been in the past. On average, a cost per click on mobile costs a lot less than a click on desktop or on tablet. And so a lot of the growth that Google has seen in overall click volumes has come from this area, and that's why the overall revenue is increasing. But they've probably not made as much money for that traffic on a click per click basis as they've been doing. And the reality is it will go as high as the market in each individual industry can bear. So there's been instances in the past where single high value clicks on certain medical negligence terms or financial terms can easily reach 70, 80, even in excess of £100 for a single click, because it's so driven by what the market demands and specific industries can afford to pay based on conversions. So until you get to a point where it does literally become too expensive and unprofitable for advertisers, you're just going to continue to see prices rise, I think. And in the meantime, you have Google making small changes along the way that potentially also impact that. Things like the removal of right-hand side ads that happened in Q1 last year, and other changes that they make often then have an impact on things like click-through rate, CPC, quality score, that overall impacts the amount of spend and money that they therefore make.
Got you. Okay, so essentially it's not going to be the same cost per click for every single industry, because some industries can afford to pay a lot more because obviously they're more profitable.
Yes.
And talking about profit, how does a business really determine the amount of money per click that they can afford to pay? But what kind of metrics do you recommend businesses just to keep an eye on to ensure that their campaigns are profitable?
So the first thing that a business will need to make sure they have in place is really robust tracking. So whether that is using a tool like Google Analytics or another analytics platform, or some of the inbuilt pixels that you can get for AdWords or for Bing ads that allow you to track conversions in the platform, that really is going to be the main way of making sure that you're tracking profitability in the first instance. You need to know what's happening on your website and whether or not things are leading to a conversion. But then in terms of specific metrics that people should look at, your cost per click is obviously going to be a key one there. But there's one or two other metrics that then really are what determine profitability. So for a client who is maybe focused on a cost per acquisition, maybe where they sell a product for a fixed price, or they're not so bothered about looking at things on an ROI basis, the only other metric really that matters is conversion rate. So keeping an eye on conversion will be key for them. If conversion exists, then cost per click can increase, and in theory, the amount you're paying for every single one of those acquisitions will stay the same. Where you then have a client for whom things like ROI, average order value, is key, then the revenue that they're making from every single order will then impact that, and it will be a combination of cost per click, conversion, and average order value. So for most clients, it will be a combination of those 2 or 3 metrics that will really drive whether or not something is profitable for them. But the challenges that a lot of businesses are going to have is, as we continue to move more and more towards attribution, making sure they're looking beyond the last click value that a keyword may drive will be really key, to make sure that they're not cutting out any traffic early in the journey that could lead to a sale later on. And I'd also encourage advertisers to check their bid modifiers. So in AdWords, setting your base bid is only one part of the equation. You then have modifiers that you put in place for different devices. Maybe you want to bid up or down for tablet or mobile. You've then got location modifiers, modifiers for audience, and all of these modifiers stack on top of each other. So if you've got 10% here, 20% there, and 30%, that all multiplies on top of this single base bid. And you could have a base bid of £1, but actually end up paying close to £1.50 or £2 for those clicks. So there can be that disconnect there that advertisers need to be aware of between the amount they might think they're bidding and what they're actually bidding, when all those modifiers are taken into account. So I'd encourage everyone to go away and have a look at those as well.
That is an incredible set of instructions to give people. So I appreciate that. It certainly shows you that paid search is an incredible science nowadays, and there's so many different elements to that. But if you don't get it right, you can very quickly let your budgets run away with you, and you can see why people say things like, "I tried Google AdWords paid search, and it didn't work for me. It doesn't work for me as a business." But the reality is, it wasn't set up for them correctly as a business.
Yeah, and the reality is as well, Google offers this AdWords Express product that's designed to get advertisers on board, but doesn't really give them the control they need to make a lot of those bidding decisions. So it can often be a lot more difficult for smaller companies who are already placed at that disadvantage by not having the right tools available to them. So yeah, sometimes a quick call to Google is always in order to upgrade to a regular account where you'll have more control.
Oh, back to Aleyda for story number 3, and that is Google Mobile first indexing notifications are arriving in the Google Search Console. So, Aleyda, what are these notifications telling us?
They are, it seems, yeah. Although they announced mobile first already a month ago, it's now that people are starting to receive the notifications that their websites have started to move to the mobile first index, right? So the first clarification is that Google mentioned that they were going to start with those websites that they saw that were ready for mobile first index. And people assumed that Google meant that these websites were meant to be already mobile optimized, mobile friendly, that they had a mobile version, right? And a few people started to say, "Oh, I don't want to be moved to a mobile first index, so I on purpose, I want to have a mobile version." Even this is crazy, but yes, I could see a little bit of chat around that over Twitter. But then again, what Google confirmed that what they are actually taking into consideration is the accessibility, the indexability of the mobile of the website from a crawling perspective. So if the crawler can effectively access the mobile crawler can effectively access the website and index the website, they will likely also move it to start moving it to the mobile first index. It's not about having a mobile version. There has been a little bit of chat and trying to understand better how mobile first is also going to work. And the best explanation that I have seen actually has been the one of Danny Sullivan, like mentioning that there are not going to be two indexes, parallel indexes at the same time, mobile and desktop, as a few people thought. But it's just about thinking how right now Google work with the desktop copy of our content, of our website, and now it's going to start crawling, getting the mobile copy of our content. And that is why it's important to first assure that our website is crawlable with the mobile crawler, that our content is still indexable, that all the content that existed in our desktop version also is there in our mobile versions, that are all meta tags are there from title, but meta descriptions. Also, the structured data is there. Line annotations are there, because it was quite a common type of optimization action, especially from a performance perspective, that developers eliminated their extra tags from independent URLs, in independent mobile URL settings, or even in dynamic serving type of settings. So we need to make sure that all the content, all the tags are also in a mobile URLs too, in a mobile version, mobile HTML. If this if we are not having our website with responsive web design that uses the same HTML, but we actually have a different one with dynamic serving and in an independent mobile setting. Also, something super important, I believe, that needs to be clarified is that still a few people think that just because they have AMP, they will be fine, and that is not correct. If you're not using AMP as a canonical version of your site, then you should be looking to have a mobile website correctly optimized, that your content is correctly set, that it is fast to, etc., etc.
So for the domains that have gone through mobile first indexing, Are we seeing any significant change in rankings because of it?
Realistically, I haven't, and this is crazy because I have access to many domains, and I have actually only seen a couple of cases of people mentioning that they have received a notification. One of them mentioned over Twitter that they have been seeing an increasing in crawling activity, but and a little bit of rankings increase in the last few days. But again, you cannot tell for sure if this is related necessarily to more first indexing or because of all of the other updates that are happening at the same time, or even actions that they could be making in SEO, right? So until I don't get one of these notifications myself and are not able to actually validate directly, I'm afraid that I cannot tell, from my own data, if I have had a positive impact. Hopefully I will, because I have been working hard in the last month with my own clients to make this happen like in a positive way for them. Honestly, like we should be able to not only receive the notification, but also Google has mentioned how we should see an important increase in the mobile Google bot crawling and on our sites that are switching to a mobile first index. So it's important to check our logs. And then on the other hand, also we should be able to see the mobile version of our pages in the Google cache when our pages are moved to mobile first index. So it should be pretty straightforward to validate too.
So do you know roughly what percentage of web page results in the SERP at the moment are being crawled through mobile first indexing?
No, Google hasn't disclosed that information. Unfortunately, we're still seeing a little bit what is going to happen. It should be nice that there should be like a proper monitoring, open type of but sadly, it's not sure.
I was just wondering if you had a very close relationship with Google and they shared secret information.
No, sadly I don't. I asked questions. Last week I had the opportunity to do the Q&A with John Mueller, and I was as hungry for information there, but I couldn't even ask my own questions because I needed to give the opportunity for the community questions. So
Okay, great. So we're going to move back to Arianne just in a second. Arianne, just to let you know, you'll have to unmute yourself. I muted you because I think we're getting an echo through somewhere, so feel free to unmute yourself now. I just wanted to give you the heads up just before we move back to Arianne. After that, for both of you, I'm going to ask you for a single actionable takeaway that our listeners can take away and implement within the business. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to what we've been talking about. So I just wanted to give you a couple of minutes to have a little think about that prior to having this last topic. So the final story goes to Arianne. So responding to reviews can apparently improve your paid search conversion rates. So Arianne, what do you make of this one?
I find that really interesting. It's been no surprise that having reviews helps conversion. Stellar Ratings has been a site link on the paid search apps for a long time now, and they really help the adverts stand out with that pop of orange in a sea of what is otherwise blue and grey text. But I was really surprised by reading this article and seeing the impact that responding to reviews can have. I think a lot of it probably comes down to people liking to see that the people behind brands are human, maybe that there is customer service there, and that bodes well for any interactions that they may then have with a brand moving forward, particularly if for some reason anything goes wrong. So I think seeing how a brand responds to reviews, particularly negative ones, can give that real element of reassurance and visibility to a brand, and hopefully give you the edge over someone else that maybe doesn't have that mechanism in place.
I was surprised because I wouldn't imagine that a significant percentage of people who click on an ad and then go directly to maybe a landing page would interact or experience a company that has interacted with those reviews. So do you think that Google are maybe looking at the overall journey of customers that perhaps click on a paid ad and go back and experience other things, and the reason they go back to the secondary paid click ad is because of reading reviews?
Yeah, without understanding more information about the journey and exactly the kinds of keywords that were examined as part of this study as well, it's hard to say. I would imagine that it would have more of an impact on generic terms higher up the journey when you're in that consideration phase and you're trying to decide exactly who you're going to buy from, and having those trust signals and those reviews can be a key decision maker in that instance. Whereas on brand terms, you may be a returning customer, you may already have that particular brand in mind to purchase from, and you may not be dissuaded. So I find it really interesting, as you say, there might be some element of maybe a customer sees and then after further exploring and evaluation of other brands, then goes back and it becomes a decision maker at that point. But I'm honestly surprised that it has that much of an impact. It's great because it shows that it's worth doing, but it's very surprising.
I know that Amazon, for example, if you do a search on Google and you happen to see an Amazon link, people are much more likely to click on that than a generic result for whatever website offering the same kind of product or service. And that's obviously because people recognize the Amazon brand or are more comfortable clicking through to that and making a purchase. So obviously building a brand does make a massive difference. So what about that, or customer centricity in general? Have you got any other thoughts on how paid search is impacted by that?
Yeah, and it's funny that you mention Amazon, because I think a lot of people love to go to Amazon because of the reviews that they see, the fact that there is so much data there that they can mine, understanding other people's experiences. So it's clear that reviews are important, but it's interesting to see how much that human element and that visibility of the company responding also plays a part. So it probably comes down to, particularly for smaller brands looking to establish themselves, seeing what else they can do in terms of these trust signals to emphasize their legitimacy, how they would respond to the customer in the event of a problem. So it comes down to a lot of the same guidelines I often give clients in terms of what they should have on landing pages generally. So things like your reviews, any testimonials that you have, details of any awards or accreditation, and then finally stuff like videos, so people can see the people behind the brand, maybe customer testimonials done through video, anything that helps emphasize that you are a real company with real people behind it. And I find it quite funny because as a millennial, you know, I hate picking the phone up and having to actually deal with people. If I can do it all online, I will. But it's funny how important that human element still is in that online purchase journey, even though we're so used to just operating and dealing with really machines.
It's almost come full circle, because I remember kind of early days of internet marketing, it was called back then, not really digital marketing. But back then, people did hide behind their computers, and they didn't even want to put their own name to a piece of content or their own photo. And possibly because of social media, Instagram, people sell them what they do through themselves individually, and they offer that as an element of trust. And I guess bigger organizations need to get better at putting their own employees forward as representatives of their brand, as people that the consumer can trust and make a purchase decision because of that. Is this the kind of move that you're encouraging companies to make yourself to, again, increase that conversion rate?
It's funny because over time you see how it begins to blur together with social, and I know that things like social signals are increasingly of importance when it comes to the organic index and how Google evaluates what sites, you know, it should have as being trustworthy. And it's a difficult one because companies have to approach it really carefully. We all see instances on social media where something goes, you know, really wrong when an employee posts something or says something. But on the other hand, or it goes really right. You see really good examples. I read one recently about an attendant, I think it was on Southwest Airlines, and how his element of customer service went viral on social media, and obviously then earns a lot of kudos for the company. So it's finding that balance between having the kind of guidelines to keep things in place, to keep things structured, but not removing that element of fun and spontaneity and individualism that really helps mark a company out. So it's really difficult, and figuring out exactly how you want to bridge that divide and make your brand more personal, if that's something that is relevant for your brand, is really challenging. And there's very few people, I think, who have it really right, but there are certainly some examples out there.
Well, that just about takes us up to the end of the 7th episode. So just time for an actionable tip from each of our guests. So related to, or not necessarily related to, what we have been discussing today so far, whatever you feel best. So Aleyda, let's go with you first. What is your actionable tip? Aleyda, if you unmute
Now,
yourself.
yes, yeah, indeed, I had unmuted myself because I didn't want to say anything like, just start doing SEO, don't do PPC. No, it's a joke. No, actually, my actual tip is that for the mobile first index, right? I think that it is about time that we actually change a little bit the way that we do audits, because at the end of the day, what we want to simulate is how the mobile group but sees our website. And I have seen again and again, and shockingly many cases where just because the website has a mobile friendly version, it is believed that it is correctly configured from a crawling and indexing perspective, and it is not like this. So actually, I think that a very easy way to validate this is with, for example, Screaming Frog has a JS rendering option that we can select when crawling our website as the mobile Google bot, and it will show us actually how our content is rendering, how it's being shown to the Google mobile bot. So we will be able to see if the elements of the content are not loading at all because there is a dodgy JavaScript that is being used and is blocking the correct rendering of the content. Google has confirmed that there's nothing wrong to hide content on mobile. So as long as it is in the HTML, as the content is included in the HTML, the content won't be overlooked just because we are like not showing it by default as it is done on desktop, right? So that should be okay. But at least that we should be able to confirm there that the actual, like, we are able to scroll through the whole thing, that the content and the elements, the images are there. So I think that that's a very quick validation, a visual way, very easy way to start doing this.
Great tips. I took a couple of things from that. One was there are different levels of mobile success, and it's not just about ticking a box, mobile done, and then moving on. And secondly, mobile is like any other area of digital marketing. It's not a case of doing it and then forgetting about it. You probably have to hone what you do and come back and check it and make sure that you're adhering to best practice all the time.
Yeah, indeed.
Wonderful. Okay, well, you can find Aleyda over at aleydasolis.com. Thank you so much for joining us. And Arianne, what is your actionable tip?
My tip. So I'll go back to the point I was making a little earlier about bid modifiers. Something that I see a lot in accounts is sometimes I'm surprised at the amount of money someone is actually paying for a bid. They'll say something like, oh, my maximum bid was only 50p, so why am I paying £1 for this cost per click? And a lot of that ties back to what I was saying earlier about the bid modifiers that you can have in place. By the time you've laid on a multiplier for device, for location, for a given audience, and maybe even you have Google Enhanced CPC playing a part in there as well, that can very quickly cause you to lose control of those bids. And so often what we'll do is we'll continue adjusting the bid modifiers and layering on amends there, when what we should really do is maybe go back and increase the overall base bid and have smaller modifiers on top of that, giving us more control of what's going on. So I'd encourage everybody to go away and have a look at the amount they've actually set at max CPC level, but then make sure they're looking at those bid modifiers, because they run the risk of losing control if they allow them to just multiply up in such a way and don't keep an eye on them. It's always worth revisiting every so often and seeing if everything you're increasing and bidding higher, you're best off actually just increasing the base bid and then having your smaller bid modifiers on top of that. So particularly for your bid terms that spend a lot of money, I'd encourage people to check the top 10, top 20 keywords that are their main spend and traffic drivers, and just do that to sense check and make sure they still have that element of control moving forward. As CPC inflation is a very real thing, and particularly if you are layering any of Google's bid strategies on top of that, it's really key to make sure you have as much control as you can, and that base bid is still the best way to do it. Wonderful. Modification is where it's at. You can find Arianne over at epiphany.co.uk. And thank you for joining us, Arianne. Great to have you here. Thank you. And I've been your host, David Bain. You can also find me over at digitalmarketingradio.com. We'll be recording the next episode 8 of Search Marketing Scoop, at the same time, same place, if we can, on the YouTube channel that belongs to Semrush, or perhaps even the Semrush Facebook page. We'll keep you on your toes wherever it happens to be. It will be, however, on Wednesday the 23rd of May, when my guests are scheduled to be Kirk Williams from Zato and Farfetch Head of SEO Matt Rideout.
In the meantime, thanks not only to Aleyda and Arianne, but also for you for tuning in. If you're watching us live, thank you for being a part of it. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to the audio podcast. So just head over to searchmarketingscoop.com and follow the link you preferred to an Apple or an Android device, whatever happens to be your preferred flavor. But until we meet again, be fantabulous and do one thing that scares you. Adios.